Fight fans, we have been waiting a long time for this one. It's been almost 3 years since the last time we saw Jon Jones in the octagon. And if we're being perfectly honest with each other, during that time we've seen different little teasers of what may come. We've heard rumors, we've heard stories, but we were never quite sure about when it was going to happen. We were even never quite sure about if and when he came back, who he was going to fight. At a certain point, it became pretty obvious that when he did come back, it was going to be in the heavyweight division, but there was always so much back and forth. There was always so many stories. There was always so much uncertainty, and always with the teasing that's just constantly leaving you wanting more, constantly with the little baiting. But here we are. Fight week UFC 285, man, main event. We're getting Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. And what a fight. What a fight. For a while, it looked like we were going to get Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou, and that was just going to be an absolute blockbuster when you consider what Ngannou was bringing to the table with the incredible power and the way he ran through the division, the way he dealt with Stipe. Then you're looking at Jon Jones, and this man has established himself basically at the top of Mount Rushmore. He is basically universally looked at as the GOAT, moving up from 205 to heavyweight. That would have been amazing. But lo and behold, that's not what we get, right? For reasons that are beyond our control, we're not getting Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. We're getting Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. But this is going to be an amazing fight as well, right? And I don't want to act like I'm throwing any damper on the party because I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be great. In some ways, I actually think that Ciryl Gane is going to present more of a challenge for Jon Jones than Francis Ngannou would. But look, before we start to break down the analytics and the X's and O's of each fighter, just want to take a second, do a quick little recap, right? Because like I mentioned, it's been almost 3 years since we've seen Jon Jones in the octagon, right? And when you get that kind of time off, it's easy to remember the legend of. Because Jon Jones does have a legendary career, right? It's easy to think about the young man who came up and won the UFC belt, 23 years old, youngest UFC champion ever, ran through the old guard at 205, just wiped him out when you think about what he did to Lyoto Machida. You think about what he did to Rampage. You think about what he did to Shogun. You think about what he did to Rashad Evans. In every single way, he's in there and he's doing these men differently. Just going in there. The one thing that remained true, the one thing that was universal was that he was going out there and destroying people. Jon Jones was a phenom. Goes over there, knocks off Chael Sonnen. Goes over there, knocks off Vitor Belfort. Goes over there, takes an Olympic caliber wrestler in Daniel Cormier. And look at what that developed into. They got this bad blood and it's going back and forth. Daniel Cormier makes the statement about being able to take him down at will. Jon Jones challenges him, says, I don't think it's going to be like that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take you down, and I'm going to do what I want to you, and you're not going to be able to take me down. And even if you do get me down, you won't be able to hold me down. Jon Jones goes out there and just dominates. But that isn't the last Jon Jones that we saw in the octagon, right? The last Jon Jones we saw in the octagon was the one against Dominic Reyes. The one right before that was against Thiago Santos. And if we're being honest with each other, that was a little bit different Jon Jones. There was some dispute about whether or not he won that fight against Dominic Reyes. Personally, I gave it to him, but the reason there was dispute is because Dominic Reyes looked good early on. He was landing shots. He was winning rounds. Same thing with Thiago Santos. What if Thiago Santos wouldn't have hurt his leg at the end of the first round? He was racking up some nasty leg kicks. He was looking good. He was causing Jon some trouble. Right, so this was a Jon that we hadn't seen before. One that was getting caught with shots that we weren't used to. One that was losing rounds that we weren't used to quite seeing. And now on top of it, it's been 3 years. Put on, 40 pounds of muscle, and 3 years later. You look across the octagon with Ciryl Gane. Now that's a man who's had 6 fights since the last time we've seen Jon Jones in the octagon, right? Completely different story. Man who's always been a heavyweight, who's run through the heavyweight division for the most part, right? Don't want to act like he's fought everybody everywhere all the time, but he's looked very good in the performances that he's come out for, up to and including his shot at the belt against Francis Ngannou. I mean, look, he came up short in that one, he lost, but if we're being honest with each other, if we separate the grappling aspect of it, he even looked good in that fight. Went the distance with him. And think about what we've seen from Ciryl Gane in his very last fight, the one against Tai Tuivasa. I'd make the argument that that's the best version of him that we've seen. He takes everything that makes him great, everything that makes him an elite level fighter, and he put it on in that fight to just a wonderful display. Think about the footwork, right? The way that he controls distance is something that makes him special. He bounces around at 245 pounds or whatever he is, but he moves around like he's 185. And he uses that footwork multiple ways. He can bounce around on the outside, allow himself to switch between stances and be very creative, constantly creating these different looks and these different angles, and he's hard to track down. That makes it hard for a guy to set up his offense. It makes it hard for a guy to set up his shot if he wants to come in and try to go and take you down when you've got that type of lateral movement. But he also uses it to close the distance well. He'll come inside, he'll start to hand fight maybe a little bit. He's got some great teep kicks, goes to the body, he can take it upstairs. He's got a wonderful jab that he uses, that he can just bounce in, close the distance quick, and land the jab and bounce on the outside. Great creative striking, great footwork, very fast hands, very fast feet. You know, it was funny, leading up to this fight, Jon Jones was sending some tweets out there saying that he thought it was interesting that people were thinking that Ciryl Gane was going to be his toughest striking opponent or his most seasoned striker. He referenced Thiago Santos being dangerous and throwing everything with bad intentions. Look, I disagree with that entirely. It's true that Thiago Santos was a very dangerous striker, and it's true that he was throwing everything with bad intentions, but that doesn't make you more dangerous than the next man. That doesn't automatically qualify you as being better because you're throwing things harder or you're throwing things to do a bunch of damage. Ciryl Gane will be fine dancing around on the outside, piecing you up, winning on a points decision after 5 rounds. That's totally cool. And he can do it. He's done it to a lot of people. It wouldn't be the first time. His hands and his feet are so fast. He's so creative with the strikes, whether it's the elbows, he's inside on the clinch and he's using the knees, whether he's using the jab from the outside or the different array of kicks that he has. And he's able to throw things out there with almost no tell. Incredibly impressive striking. But if we're being honest with each other, the next thing that we got to bring up is the flaw in his game. The next thing that we have to bring up is why we saw him lose against Francis Ngannou, and that's the grappling. Look, Ngannou is no wizard when it comes to grappling. As a matter of fact, we saw Ngannou get dominated by Stipe Miocic when it comes to wrestling. Right now, look, in the rematch, he was able to stuff the takedowns and he was able to get the knockout. And, you know, he was showing some decent technique. And when we saw him in the fight with Ciryl Gane, he was showing some decent technique when he scored his takedowns. But it wasn't amazing. He's not known as this great wrestler. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think part of the reason he was able to get some of those takedowns is because he's so incredibly strong and he was able to muscle through them. He's catching the kicks. He's going for the double leg. He's being relentless in the way that he takes things down. So on the one hand, we're seeing Francis Ngannou win the fight off of grappling when he's in there with Ciryl Gane. But it's not just that. It's not just that he was able to get the takedowns. We got to look at that one step further, and we got to say that when he got those takedowns, almost every single time he was able to advance his position. He's going from a takedown to half guard. He's going from a takedown to side control. He's going from a takedown and then inside of a scramble, he's able to get the back. He's able to get Ciryl Gane in some very bad, vulnerable positions. Now, he wasn't able to do too much with it because he's not a ground and pound master. He's not a jiu-jitsu wizard or anything along those lines. But that's kind of my point. If Francis Ngannou was able to get to those positions, imagine what Jon Jones is going to be able to do. A man who's incredibly skilled on the ground. A man who we've seen go in there and take down a bunch of people. Whether we're talking about Olympic level wrestlers like Daniel Cormier, whether we're talking about, incredibly decorated collegiate and national level wrestlers like Chael Sonnen, whether we're just talking about Alexander Gustafsson, it doesn't matter who we're talking about. When we talk about Jon Jones, a man with 42 takedowns in the light heavyweight division, we're talking about a man who takes people down basically when he wants to. When he wants to take the fight to the ground, he takes the fight to the ground. And when he's there, he's incredibly dangerous. If you allow any separation, he's so tall, he's so long, he's able to get in there with these elbows and these punches and just rain down ferocious shots on his opponents that usually end up ending the fight and usually end up ending it pretty quickly. All you got to do is look at what happens when he got on top of Daniel Cormier. Look at what happened when he got on top of Alexander Gustafsson. It doesn't take very long. And Jon Jones is incredibly gifted with his own striking, right? Very high ring IQ. But look, let's be honest with each other. He's not exactly the most fleet of foot. Doesn't have the quickest hands. Doesn't put together the greatest combinations, right? But it's in spite of those things that he's able to succeed at the absolute highest level. It's because he knows exactly what to do and when to do it. He doesn't have to be the fastest guy in there. Doesn't have to have the fastest hands or the most fluid combinations. He knows how to set his kicks up. He knows how to set his punches up. He knows how to control the distance. People don't understand how powerful that is. When you can control the gap between you and your opponent, it means everything. I'm not there when you want me to be there, and I'm there when you don't want me to be. He gets in there, he does that hand fighting. He's able to feel when a guy's going to do something to get out of the way himself. If a guy tries to back up, he's throwing long attacks with his kicks, whether it's a spinning kick to the ribs, and he's digging his heel in there, whether he's throwing an oblique kick. Rampage still to this day talks about how his knee's been messed up ever since Jon Jones kicked it. He's able to go in there and just do so many different things. He's able to throw long punches. He's able to dig to the body. When he gets inside, he's able to control the hands, manipulate them to land vicious elbows, whether he's standing or on the ground. I mean, we saw what he did to Rashad Evans with those elbows. We saw how he tore people up and just cut faces open with elbows on the ground. But I don't think it's going to be the striking that's going to be the difference here. Because if we're being honest with each other, and this was just going to be a kickboxing affair, if this was just going to be a Muay Thai match, the line may not be Jon Jones being the favorite. Especially moving up in heavyweight, right? If he wasn't the fastest guy at 205, he sure isn't going to be the fastest guy once he puts on 40 pounds of muscle. If he wasn't the most accurate striker at 205, he's not all of a sudden going to magically become the most accurate striker once he moves up to heavyweight. And we're talking about a guy like Ciryl Gane, who's he's amazing on the feet. When you go in there and you see the things he does, when he's firing on all cylinders, it's beautiful. And he's great in the clinch too. But that's not what we're talking about. This is an MMA match. And Jon Jones' striking is very good, and it's complemented by his wrestling. And it's his wrestling and his grappling that I believe is going to make the difference in this one. He's come out again with these tweets, and he's mentioned it, that if Francis Ngannou was the most difficult grappler that Ciryl Gane has ever faced, it's going to be easy work for him. And I don't think it'll be easy work by any stretch of the imagination. Look, I don't think that Ciryl Gane is going to be as good a grappler as Jon Jones. You can't just turn around and manufacture that level of expertise in a short period of time. Jon's been wrestling his whole life. He's coming out of college. He's got credentials, man. He's decorated. He knows what he's doing, and he's proven it over in MMA to be an incredibly effective wrestler. So I don't care if you gave Ciryl Gane 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years. He's out there, he's training with top guys. I don't believe he can get to that level that quickly. It's going to take much longer than that, even if he's ever able to get up there. But Jon Jones is going to be able to come in and he's going to be able to wrestle. And although it won't be easy, he will be able to get the takedown. Although it may not be easy, he's going to be able to advance to an advantageous position. Although he may not be able to keep Ciryl Gane down, he's going to be able to score damage when he's there. He'll be able to get multiple takedowns. I think that's going to end up being the difference in this fight. That's what's going to lead him to the victory. He may get caught with some shots. He may get caught with the jab. He may get caught with some kicks. He may not look great on the feet. Let's not forget. Like I mentioned, when we saw him in there with Thiago Santos, when we saw him in there with Dominic Reyes, he was getting caught by those guys at that point when he was 3 years younger, 3.5, 4 years younger. Were those guys better strikers than Ciryl Gane? And here's another little tidbit. We always, Jon likes to mention how his haters reference that it's easier for him to be victorious. It's easier for him to look good in there because of his height and his reach, right? Longest reach in the UFC, 84 inches. But think about his most difficult fight. If we're being honest with each other and we're looking at his most difficult fight, the one that's always referenced, the one that made the Hall of Fame, it was when he was in his first fight with Alexander Gustafsson. It's the one that people kind of reference if they're thinking about the potential mark on his resume, the potential one that maybe he didn't actually win when he got a gift of a decision. It happens with everybody. Even if we're going to boxing, we're talking about Floyd Mayweather. There's always going to be people who talk about that first fight with Jose Luis Castillo, say that he didn't really win it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But my point is this. The reason that Alexander Gustafsson gave him so much trouble in that fight was because he was just as big as him. Not just as big, the reach wasn't just the same, but he was the tallest and longest fighter that Jon had been to that point. And you could tell that his control of distance and his way the way that he controlled the gap was a little bit off in that fight. Now, he had it corrected, and by the time they made it to the second fight, he was able to dominate because instead of keeping it at a boxing range, which is where Alexander Gustafsson likes it, he was able to move it out even a little bit further and keep it at a kicking range. So he was able to do a lot of damage that way. He was able to control it that way and really keep Gustafsson at a distance where he couldn't do much. He's not going to have that same luxury with Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane is going to now be the tallest and longest fighter that Jon Jones has faced. And even though Jon Jones will have the reach advantage still at 84 inches, it's only going to be a few. Ciryl Gane's measured at 81. And you can't just all of a sudden step out a little bit and decide, I'm just going to keep it at kicking range because Ciryl Gane just likes his hands. No, very good with his feet. Doesn't have any tells at all in the way that he throws his legs up there. So I think in that sense, when it's on the feet, Ciryl Gane could have the advantage. It'll be a very interesting affair. But it's the wrestling that's going to make the difference. I think Jon Jones is going to come away with the victory here. But I have two things that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on. Two things that I want to look at as a little X factor or a wild card. So even though I'm predicting Jon to win this fight, and I think there's value in the line with him going off at about minus 160, there's two things I'm going to keep my eyes on. Number one, it's going to be how Jon Jones handles this weight. He puts on all this weight, and I think he's been out there with guys like Stan Efforting, powerlifting, doing all of these things. We know about the discipline and the work ethic he has. We know about how he's going to be on point with his nutrition and everything that he's taking, and just the actual workouts and things that he's going through, because these are world-class guys. He's going to be incredibly strong when he goes in there, no doubt. But how is his cardio going to hold up? We've seen guys who put on a lot less weight than him go into these matches. And by the time you start to get toward the end of the fight, that extra weight that you're carrying around makes a difference. So although I'm sure Jon will be incredibly prepared, he hasn't been in there in 3 years. And now he's coming in at an extra 40 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it may be, all this muscle. So I'm going to be interested in his cardio. Number two, I'm going to be interested in kind of referencing it with the first point. It may be the 3 years out that affect his cardio. That may be because of the ring rust. That may be because of the pressure. That may be because of the bright lights. I mean, we've never seen Jon crack or fold or anything like that before, but we've never seen him out for this long. This is a really long time, and the lights have never been brighter by moving up and challenging for the heavyweight belt. And deep in his mind, you know this dude is incredibly competitive. So even though he beat Daniel Cormier twice decisively, stopped him with that head kick and then the follow-on barrage afterwards, Daniel Cormier was able to go up and win the heavyweight belt. So what if Jon goes up to challenge for the heavyweight belt and loses? What if he's not able to get it? There's going to be people who turn around and all of a sudden start to compare him to Daniel Cormier again when he thought that was behind him. And let me tell you, that is not something that a man like Jon Jones wants. He doesn't want. Look at the way that he goes out there and just jumps on Twitter and starts to attack any idea, any concept that anybody else is the greatest of all time. People mention George St. Pierre, and he runs right out there and he's talking about it on Twitter. Here's why George isn't an I am. People mention Khabib. Here's why Khabib isn't an I am. The man is incredibly focused on his legacy. He's incredibly focused on the way other people view his accomplishments and what he's done. He doesn't want any kind of blemish. So the pressure's on. The lights are bright. Over 3 years since he's been in there. I'm picking him to win, but I think these are some things that we need to keep in mind. I think there's a couple things that we need to focus on. So, let me know what you guys think. Are you as excited about this one as I am? Are you looking forward to it just as much? Do you think Jon is going to be able to come back and look as impressive, more impressive relative to his level of competition? Is he going to try to keep it striking? Because he's always testing guys, and he says he wants to beat guys where they're strong. Is he going to put his ego into play? Is he going to try to beat Ciryl Gane standing up? Is he going to keep it relatively easy and go for the takedown? Man, can't wait to see how this one stacks up. Let me know what you guys think.